Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Kam Knight. And you have to tell me how you pronounce your name. Was it right?
That was perfect. Cam Knight is the way to say it.
Oh, thank you so much for saying yes to our
Yeah.
interview today. And I would like to introduce you to the audience. Of course, you are a coach, international speaker, and best-selling author of a dozen books in the area of mental performance and personal mastery. You are known for bringing fresh solutions and insights that are a rare departure from traditional ideas. Because of your fresh perspective, your books have become the gold standard for their respective topics, which have helped over 500,000 people. When you are not coaching or writing, you are traveling, having traveled to over 100 countries around the world. Welcome, Cam Knight.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I am so happy to be here. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you. And I'm so inspired to talk to you about, for example, your books. They are on mental performance and personal mastery and have helped over 500,000 people and are considered gold standards in their field. What unique perspectives or techniques do you offer that set your work apart from traditional approaches?
Well, one of the things I try to really focus on is not saying or repeating what others have said. A lot of times people get into the coaching and writing books, and what they end up saying is stuff that they read or heard before. And so a lot of new ideas, it hinders the flow of new ideas. And I believe a lot of the stuff that has been talked about, I think worked at a time, but I don't think is applicable anymore and it's not useful. But it's the same ideas that are being repeated. And unfortunately, people, when they don't get results from them, they start to assume it's them, that there's something wrong with them, that they're lazy or that they don't have the discipline and motivation. But that's not true. It's just that they were given, in many ways, wrong information or information where the person giving it didn't really apply it enough to understand if it works or how well it would work or what you need to make sure you have going on to make sure that it works. And so I really focus on techniques that try to, I don't want to be different for the sake of being different, but I really apply myself and learn to see where that information is accurate and where it falls short and what could be better. It's the reason I've traveled to 100 countries and done some amazing things like snowboarding all over the world, scuba diving with hammerhead sharks, uh, doing some really out there stuff that most people can't imagine. But I did that to really understand and push myself to see how well the stuff that I'm giving is going to work.
Wow, I love your answer. Thank you so much. It is about being different and not using the same words you said. Of course, you use your own words to describe what you learned and you applied
Yeah.
in your life or to your life. I love that you traveled so much as well. You have much experience and can tell many stories about that. Let's have a look at the next question. As
Sure.
someone who has traveled to over 100 countries, how have your global experiences influenced your coaching and writing in the realm of mental performance and personal mastery?
I think it's been huge because, growing up in one place or where I grew up, which was the US, it's easy to start assuming that this is the way humans live and this is the way we need to expect from life and what we can get out of life. And, growing up in the US, there are a lot of advantages, but I felt like the culture was really stuck on certain things that weren't really healthy. They loved watching sports and television. And for me, it wasn't fulfilling. I wanted something more. And the more I traveled in the US, the more I saw the same. And I started to assume, wow, this is the way life is. Like, this is what I need to accept, and this is what I can expect out of it. But when I started traveling, I started to see so many more different ways of life, ways of thinking, ways of behaving, and realize there isn't just one approach to things. And I think that's what's helped me a lot is just getting all these perspectives from different people, different cultures, and different life experiences. People have gone through a lot of, hardship in the countries and continents where they live, whether it's extreme dictatorship, it's different economic challenges, lack of opportunity. Some countries tend to be very small, smaller than some cities in some respects, and seeing how they manage life and see the world. And then I've also interacted with many indigenous tribes from all over the world, whether the Kuna in Central America, the Maasai in Africa, Aboriginals in Australia, Inuit in Greenland. And that's given me even a deeper perspective of what humanity is really like or is about, and what we're really truly built to be fulfilled by. So all of those experiences really come into my coaching, and I think provide something unique that someone who hasn't had those experiences can't.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. And I love how you pointed out about watching people watching television, and you decided for yourself that, or no, not only television, it was also watching sports. And you
Yeah,
decided to be sportive on your own when you mentioned the scuba diving and also the snowboarding aspect,
yeah,
not only watching or observing other people, but taking action and traveling around the world. I love that. And then you can coach other people who never stepped outside comfort zones, so to say,
right.
to get the courage or to be brave and follow their path, whatever this may be. Of course, I love that so much. And also how you talked about the ancient cultures, cultural aspects in the countries, and also the how do you call the native
The indigenous.
yeah, inhabitants in other countries. I like that. And then you can compare it and combine it and mix it up and have
Yeah,
rules and principles and something like that. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's have a
yeah,
look
no
at
problem.
our next question. You've
Sure.
written a dozen books on various aspects of mental performance. Which
Yeah.
topic or book do you find people resonate with the most, and why do you think that is?
It's kind of interesting because I've written a lot of books. So every time I write a book, I think this will be the book that people like. And there will be some books where I think people won't like that book. But it usually ends up being the opposite. The ones that I didn't think people would enjoy tend to be my bestsellers. And the ones where I actually put my heart and soul into tend not to do as well. So for a long time, one of my books, Mind Maps, Quicker Notes, Better Memory, and Improved Learning 3.0, was one of my best-selling books for several years. And it wasn't a book that I put a lot of effort into. I just kind of like put it together, threw it up, and I was just surprised how much people liked it. And there was one point I was writing two books at the same time. It was an ambitious goal that I took on, and I learned a lot from that experience. I won't do that again. But I was writing my book Speed Reading as well as my book Concentration. And concentration is really where I just pour everything I learned from traveling to 100 countries, doing my own work, doing my healing work, and all of that. And it was a speed reading book that really did well, that really took off. And I think it's because of the simplicity, because I didn't put as much effort into speed reading as I did concentration. Now, mind you, I still put a lot of effort into it, but because there was this expectation I wanted out of my concentration book, for some reason the universe didn't respond to it. But with the speed reading, it was much more simple. It was much more quick applicable. Like people could quickly read a few pages and accelerate the reading speed really, really easily. And I think that's what was a draw for that book. Whereas a concentration, it's just a harder skill to develop and problem to tackle. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges people have right now, especially in this generation. And so the solutions aren't easy. But as simple as I made things, it still takes a little bit of time and effort to get results. Whereas with my speed reading book, you can just get results immediately. By the time a person finishes the book, they can double or triple their reading speed with higher comprehension and memory. So I think the instant result was really big draw for people for that book.
Mhm. I see the point. So, on the one hand, the expectations you had that prevent the book maybe from taking off, and then on the other hand, the immediate results with your speed reading book. Wow, this is amazing. I remember I did a course, it was a 2 days course about speed reading 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So it is amazing. So I would recommend, yeah, let's recommend your books about speed reading because I know how helpful it can be when you have to read a lot and then you have a technique to apply. Yes, this is
Yeah.
amazing. I did not know this. You want to add something?
No, I was just gonna say, you said to talk about that book. So the book is called Speed Reading: Learn to Read a 200-page book in an hour. And back in the day, like you had to take courses that took a few days to learn the material. But I put a lot of effort, like I said, into this book, where only within a few chapters, a person can quickly accelerate their reading speed as well as their understanding of what they read, and at the same time, improve their memory of it in the later chapters. So, yeah.
Wow, amazing. This is exactly what we need when we want to speed up. And at the same time, you mentioned to concentrate as well. I
Yeah.
or most of the people don't differentiate between to focus is something else as than to concentrate. Focus means zooming out everything else, I think, and concentrate is concentrate on one thing, one task, one goal, for example. And it's so important because we know with social media and the little videos we have,
Yeah.
we can only concentrate 20 seconds or 40 seconds, I don't know.
Eh, Yeah, our attention spans are definitely getting shorter and shorter, especially with these videos where there's so much scene changes, where things are changing rapidly, like less than under a second. And then there's all these emojis and sound effects that are coming on, that our brain is becoming hardwired and used to interacting with the world that way. And so if there aren't seed changes and sound effects and emojis and all sorts of other visual effects, we get bored really fast. And unfortunately, most tasks and works require us to do things that don't have that. So it makes it really difficult. And I think now more than ever, we actually have to develop the skill of concentration. Whereas in the past, we always had it, but through just the way life has become, especially with media and social media, we have lost the ability to stay focused for an extended period of time. And now we need to develop it. And yeah, my book, it's called Concentration. Maintain laser sharp focus and attention for stretches of 5 hours or more. It helps people with exercises and drills that'll expand their concentration abilities, that are actually simple to do and apply. And if they do that consistently, they can improve their concentration to be able to focus on doing bigger tasks like writing a book or traveling the world or anything else that they desire.
I love what you said about that we can learn it, and there are methods or training as well that you can train it like a muscle.
Yeah.
Your ability to focus. I love that, so I highly recommend to dive into your book. Of course, thank you so much for sharing. And I have another question. Of
Yeah.
course, what do you believe is the most common misconception people have about personal mastery? And how do you address this in your coaching and speaking engagements?
This is a fantastic question. I think the biggest misconception that people have is that they think wanting leads to having. Just because they want something, they think they'll take the necessary steps to go after it and achieve it. But that's not the case. And what I learned in my journey is that there's a part of our mind that is built to keep us from growing and making progress. It's hard to believe, but there's a part of our brain built to hold us back. And I call this part resistance. It's the brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't no matter how much we want to do it. So it's really important to understand that anytime a person has a desire or has a want or an action stands before them, that decision gets analyzed by a part of the brain using a whole host of criteria. And if the decision is not in line with any of the criteria, the brain will prevent action. So it helps to think about standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. Every decision and desire that comes up must go through them. And if even one of the members is against the idea, it will not pass. So it doesn't matter how much motivation someone has, how simple the solution is, or how much benefit they can derive. If this part of the brain doesn't give the green light to act, they will not be able to act. Which is why a lot of people I feel like struggle with their wants and their goals because they think just because they want something and they set a plan of action that they'll take the necessary steps to achieve it. But the reality is they have to understand that anytime they have a want, there's a part of themselves that is actively going to work to stop it. And if they can have awareness that, hey, things aren't going to be as easy as it seems like I'm gonna have to put some work against my own self that's gonna battle against the effort. Just that awareness can be really helpful in moving past it. But it goes beyond the awareness. Also helps to understand why their mind is holding them back. What was the criteria that did it? How to address that criteria, as well as the manipulative trick our brain uses to keep us from doing things. So I know this was a pretty long-winded answer, but I'll just quickly summarize it, is that desire does not lead to action. So just because we want something doesn't mean we will take the necessary steps to get it.
Yes, that's so true. And I would say desire doesn't take us to the right action because you always take action. Maybe it's not productive or so. And I love how you pointed out that you see the brain as two parts or at least two parts, and you decide through which lens or through which perspective you analyze your desires, your wants, and let decide the we call it paradigm, maybe your paradigm, your
Yeah,
conditioning, you call it resistance, of course, and you have to understand the mechanisms in order to get over it, not to, yeah, to ignore this part of yourself
yeah,
and step into the unknown and to go for your desires. I love
yeah.
what you said. Thank you so much. My next question is about goals and intentions or
Okay.
desires. Do you have desires for yourself, goals, and what is one of your next goals, if you may share?
Yeah, so that's also a really great question because it leads into what you had said about the two parts of the mind. Yes, in many ways, we have two parts of the mind. One part is what creates the wants and desires, and it's actually creating endless wants and desires more than any one person can achieve. And then we have another part which looks at that want, which is the part that I talked about. It's the resistance, and it gives a green light. So both of them can get in our way. If we have an overactive wanting mechanism, it can keep us from going after our own desires. And the reason I say that is because for most of my life, I had an overactive wanting mechanism. Uh, anything I saw, I wanted to do. If I saw a nice car, I wanted it. If a pretty girl walked by, I wanted her too. And and most anything I saw on television, I wanted as well. And it was always pulling me in every direction. And because I was pulled in every direction, I couldn't move in any one. And so I really had to figure out a way to contain my wanting mechanism. I had to stop it from triggering all these wants all the time. And the way I did that was actually cutting out media, television, commercials, social media, YouTube, even internet articles. And I even went as far as to cut out people because seeing others doing and having things made me want to do and have things, and essentially created a bubble for myself so I could focus on the one wants that I really wanted to move forward with. And in my life, to answer your question, I've had many wants. That's why I've traveled to over 100 countries. I've written 12 books. I've done all sorts of activities like snowboarding, scuba diving, rock climbing, dance, and all sorts of stuff. And I'm now at a point where I've achieved, because I handle my resistance, most every want that I wanted. Like the things I've done and the places I've gone and the people I've met and the things I've seen. Like if I told most people, they'd be like, "No way, I don't believe you. That's impossible." And I have, because I got to control my wants as well as my resistance. And at this point, for me, it's not so much do I have a want or desire for anything. I think there comes a point when you have gotten everything you wanted, it's time to give back. It's time to take what you have learned from your experiences and impart that to others. And I believe as humans, we were built to do that when we have kids, like pass that information so we can help our child to develop and grow and survive in the world. And I don't have kids, and if a person doesn't, that desire is still there, but so it's there to like teach the younger generations or people who haven't gone through the path what you have learned and the mistakes you have made and things you could have done differently. And so that's what I'm doing now, is to kind of impart that knowledge. And this is the reason I write my books and we're on this show, is to for the people who could use the help or are lost or people who just need the right tips and advice, to give them some of these tools that I have picked up along the way.
Wow, I love your answer. Thank you so much. And that helps a lot also. You're giving back through books, coaching, and speaking engagements as well. And if I ask you how people can reach you, where can they find you?
It's very simple. They can find me at kamknight.com. That's just KAMKNIGHT.com. I've got a guide for them. It's called 5 Ways to End Procrastination Self-Sabotage, and they can get it there. And if they want to reach out to me, they can reach out to me at cam@kamknight.com. I do not only coaching, but I have a course on resistance, as well as my books that they can, learn from my experiences.
Oh, thank you so much. Please reach out to Cam. He's amazing. Of course, you know where. I will put it in the show notes, of course. And now is the time for your last message to the audience, please.
Again, I want to reiterate my main point is wanting doesn't lead to having. Just because you want something doesn't mean you'll take the necessary steps to get it. And you touched on this briefly, that some of our actions can lead us away from our goals. And that's because when the part of our brain that stops us, when it stops us, it doesn't tell us that it's stopping us or why. It doesn't say, "Hey, Caroline, this thing that you're trying to do, well, it doesn't meet these criteria, so I can't let you do it." That's not what your brain says. Your brain uses manipulative tricks. And a lot of these tricks can seem like they're moving you forward or creating progress, but they're just making you spin in the circles. And unless you understand the tricks and how your brain is using those tricks to keep you from being stopped, it's easy to think that your efforts are moving you along when they're really not. So that's an also important thing to understand, is that if I am going to be stopped by my own self, it's not going to be obvious. It's going to be kind of manipulative. And we have to be very careful of that.
Yes. Thank you so much for your message. I have to re listen to this podcast again. Of course, there were so many nuggets. Thank you so much for being here, being my guest today.
Thank you, Caroline. This was fantastic. I hope that your audience found something useful and something that they could take action on.
Thank you. And I see you in the next